Good evening. I would like to thank you for joining us for the 65th meeting of the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Advisory Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item we have on our agenda is the members to review the agenda from the last meeting. If you have all done so, if we could get a motion.
I make a motion we adopt the minutes.
That's it. Yes. Thank you for seconding. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Next, I'm sorry, the agenda has been approved. Next, we have the minutes from August 3rd, 2023. If you have checked those over, if we could get a motion.
I make a motion that the minute be accepted as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Second.
Thank you for the second. I'm sorry. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Next, I would like to pass it on to Michael Corey, who is our park maintenance supervisor.
Okay, first of all, good evening. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good evening.
We've got two guests tonight. We're going to start off with a topic about the burning ordinances. There's been some conversation at council meetings as well as around the community about what is and what is not legal. And obviously we're environmental and appearance, and we felt like Dr. Washington brought this up and thought it would be a good idea for us to go over this. And so we brought Chief Tallman here tonight to talk a little bit about the rules of the burning ordinance in our community. And if you have questions, feel free to ask him, but he's got a little PowerPoint to go through with you, and feel free to ask him questions as he moves forward. Chief, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. And plus it's getting that time of year where the leaves are starting to fall, the sticks are falling, and it's getting cool in the evening. So that's when people are going to have these cases. We actually fall under two sets of laws here in the city of Jacksonville. There are actually some state laws about open burning that are come through the Division of Air Quality, that the only thing that you're allowed to burn is stuff that grows in your yard. So that's sticks, leaves, trees, firewood, and stuff like that. Anything else cannot be open burn. Trash, plastic, carpet, dimensional lumber, construction debris, none of that stuff is allowed to be burned according to the state. In Jacksonville, we have some municipal codes that we have to follow too as well. In order to open burn in the city of Jacksonville, it's permit required. Now that permit can be issued by either me or the fire marshal for the city, and we have done that in the past. During one of the hurricanes, we had the open burner over there across from the Department of Public Safety. We actually had to issue a permit for that to take place. Sometimes developers, when they clear a great big section of land, they like to do that same type of burning. So we come in, they have to give us a plan, we set the conditions, and then we issue a permit for them to burn. Now, if you're caught in violation of unauthorized burning, we do have the potential to issue a $500 fine to the police department. Also, other than the permit, there are some exceptions to this unauthorized burn. Live fire training. For other than us, when we have an acquired structure that we get to train on, that we get to burn, we actually have to notify the state that we are taking part in this process. They look at the conditions, the time of year, and everything to make sure that it's good to go. And then we have to give them paperwork showing that we've had the place tested for asbestos and it's been abated. And we are now in the process too where we are testing for lead paint before we take care of any of these burns, so we don't allow any of those pollutants to get into the air. There are two other exceptions too as well. You're allowed to open burn in the city, like I said, firewood, limbs and stuff like that, and something that prevents the spread of fire, as you can see on the left here. We have the metal container there with firewood in it with the screen over it to protect embers from flying up. And the other exception is if you're outside cooking. Mr. LaCory actually submitted the other picture with the stakes
Yeah.
and the Dutch oven there, that you are allowed to burn in the city under those type of conditions as well. So we actually do not have the authority, as we did some more research to the state, as a nuisance abatement. So if somebody is legally burning in something like this, then we can't go and put it out if it is firewood and stuff like that. But our response to these type of incidents, fiscal year 23, we were dispatched 79 times to suspected unauthorized burn. And in those situations, we found 53 of those cases. Now, our job there is to investigate these. We don't run emergency traffic. We drive normal traffic to these types of calls unless it's something threatening a structure. Our job there, first of all, is to educate the public. You know, we have a highly transient public here in the city of Jacksonville, a lot of military people moving out, in and out, and most of the times they just don't know. They may have moved in from the county, somewhere else where it's allowed, and they just don't know that there are certain conditions inside the city that they have to take. Also, there's opportunities with the sanitation department. You know, with the yard debris, they pick it up every Wednesday. All you have to do is get it to the curb and they'll come and pick it up for free up to a certain amount. And there's also the dial-a-trailer service that they have too as well. You get up with the sanitation department, you schedule it, they'll bring a trailer to your house and you can drag that stuff in, load it in the trailer, and they'll haul it off for free. So if we do find it and it is unauthorized, we will extinguish it, or we'll ask the person there to extinguish it, and we'll make sure that it is extinguished before we leave. And there's also some follow-up. Like we said, we give them to educate. We want to educate them to give them conditions of what they can and can't do, the proper way to go about it. And then we send a letter just reminding them of the city's policy towards this, what they can and can't do, and just asks to them respectfully to comply in the future moving forward. So that's what I have. That's what we do as a fire department, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one for clarification. Say, for example, when you cut a lot of limbs in your yard, and say if you was to set them afire, it could be a huge blaze.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
instead of that, you're saying you have a truck that would come and pick those limbs up for free?
Yes, ma'am. The sanitation department, if you can get it to the curb, they'll actually come and pick it up themselves. Or you can call the sanitation department and they'll bring a city trailer out to your house, leave it there for you, and you can load that trailer up. They'll come back the next day and haul it off for free.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
As long as they're in city limits.
Yes, ma'am. You have to be a city resident.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. When, if ever, are there fines? If they're a repeat offender, do you do more than just send a letter?
Yes, ma'am, we would. We have not run into that case yet, fortunately. Most everybody is very respectful. We go there in a respectful nature. It's non-confrontational. We educate them, like I said, try to get them to comply. It hasn't come up yet, but we do have the possibility to write a fine. So.
I'm gonna have to start sending you on my stormwater costs then. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding.
No, I'm not. I don't want any part of that. So we're happy to go to unauthorized burns and things like that. So.
Well, I think that's great that you guys do the burning of the older homes that are supposed to be demolished to get that eyesore out of the neighborhood or wherever, and so something else can be, you know,
Yes,
put
ma'am.
in there.
Yes, ma'am. Tracy's group is wonderful with that. They give us every opportunity. And even if we can burn it, you know, if it does have asbestos abated or is close to another house, they still allow us to train on it. So it's a great opportunity for us as well. So.
I'll just add a footnote from a stormwater perspective since we are coming into fall. Please do not place leaves, limbs, and other things in the curb or in the road, because if it rains, all those leaves and debris ends up down one of our storm drains. And if the storm drain is full of leaves and debris, there's nowhere for stormwater runoff to go, so we end up flooding a street. And if the street floods, it could affect your house, your business, so please keep it back of curb.
And for Mr. Connor's sake, also too, please, the leaves have to be, if it's the smaller, looser stuff, it has to be in those paper bags. They will not pick up a plastic bag. So.
I do know that when there is usually a storm, because of where I live, that most of the debris comes down the hill. And of course, if I'm home, I can so easily try to do that. But I would like to have a little more help. It is get pretty bad right along on my street.
Well, you can always call me, or you can call Kelly with the streets department, because it's his drainage crews that actually go out and clean storm drains before large rain events. They also do it on a regular basis in between rain events. So we could help.
Okay, thank you.
I've been in Bryn Mawr recently. I had to go out there inquisitive to talk to them, see what they were doing. They're sticking it all down. They do a great job. They would, preventive maintenance, I think they would do.
Yes.
You know, and that's a good thing, because that area in Bryn Mawr where I'm at, sometimes it used to flood. The guy that cuts grass, he'll come and clean it out himself in the middle of a storm. And we thank him for that, but by seeing him come out and do pre-maintenance, it's good. Yeah.
I'm thinking about having some grapevines trimmed down, so I could order a trailer, request a trailer to have those put in once I find someone to do it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
No more questions for Chief about anything about the burning policies or unauthorized burning, or any other questions? So we can't thank you enough for coming tonight. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, this is a topic that we never need to stop educating our community, because it is so transient. And you know, to Chief's point, people move in and out of this area, and sometimes people just don't know. They were able to do it in the previous community or a previous area, and through no fault other than a lack of education, which it sounds like that's a great thing that the fire department is doing, is being proactive and giving them some education while you're out there, instead of just running out there writing tickets to people. And that's a great move. We appreciate it.
And yes, sir, and I'm glad you said that too, is also we get a message out with media. They cooperate with us, especially this time of year, to send those messages out as well. We usually put something in the city calendar too.
That's awesome. So thank you again. We're going to now pass it over to Pat Donovan Brandenburg, and I think you're probably familiar with Pat. If you're not,
Yes.
Pat's been with the city of Jacksonville for over 20 years, I believe. I think a couple of months ago she just had her 20th anniversary with the city, which if you're not familiar with her, especially anybody watching, when you look at the water around our community, and we're not limiting, let me back up and say that a little differently. I'm not going to limit to just your waterways, because there's a lot more that Pat does, and she's going to talk to you about that tonight. But when we look at the New River and where it was in 1980 and 1990 and where it is today, there's a direct reflection in that, and Pat. And you know, the work that she's done and her staff has done to help clean up that river, I don't think it's probably priceless, to be honest with you. And all of us can be thankful of that. And before I hand it over to her, and hopefully she'll talk about this a little, she did get an award just recently. I think a month or two ago, maybe 2 months ago, she was voted the North Carolina Conservationalist of the Year, Stormwater Conservationalist of the Year, Water Conservationalist of the Year, excuse me. And obviously another feather in her cap, but that falls in line with everything that I just said, and more importantly, everything she's getting ready to talk to you about, which is water in the city of Jacksonville and how it flows and the way it should flow and why it needs to flow the way it does to keep it clean.
Thank you, Michael. But we as a city earned that award. All department heads have something to do with it, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So I actually have the joy of updating this committee once here every year in October, just to let you know what your stormwater water quality department is doing every day for 20 years. So one of the things is, you know, the city of Jacksonville obtained its stormwater permit in 2007. We took the program over from the state because we felt like we could do a much better job. Nothing against the state. It's just we're here, we're on site, we can respond quicker versus anybody from Wilmington or Raleigh. And so in taking that program over, one of our permit requirements is to get our community involved with public education and involvement. And one of the things that we have is an adopt a stream, an adopt a park, or an adopt a street. So those are all great programs, and we have a lot of members that are actively doing cleanups all year round, and so I want to start with that. Our Adopt a Stream program is always very successful. I couldn't exist without them. This past year, we actually had 16 stream cleanups. About 130 miles were cleaned. We had 97 participants, and 1,215 bags of trash were recovered. Now, I have to separate that out from my hero, Mr. Jim Wheeler, who, God bless him, please let him live forever, is with our Clean and Green program, and he works for the Stormwater Water Quality Department part-time, and he's been with us 11 years. He has collected 1,000 bags of litter this past year, going back to January. And since the start of the project, he has picked up 13,256 bags. Now, I'm not talking about little food line bags. I am talking about industrial 55-gallon bags of trash. Just think 13,000 of them. And also think, without wheels, how the city of Jacksonville would be drowning in trash. Please, Lord, let him live to 1,000. So of that, he also is part of the Adopt a Stream program on his own. That's not even his job. He adopts a segment on Mill Creek just because he likes Mill Creek. And so he, from June until July, he did 130 miles of the Adopt a Stream program and his own cleanups. 130 miles. He knows the waterways better than I do, believe it or not. He's probably the only one. Something else that he has come across that's becoming a problem that the city needs to think hard, how do we address this, is he comes across abandoned homeless shelters because all of our waterways are the lowest point topography-wise. That is also where most of our sewer lines are because they're all gravity fed, because a lift station or a pump station costs the city money and it's kind of expensive. So as he's cleaning the stream, he finds these abandoned homeless camps because in some areas that's the only place that you have enough trees to hide what's there. And so what he does is when he finds one, he contacts myself as well as our police department. The police goes to check to make sure that it is abandoned because we don't want to mess with anybody and that we don't want to make their lives harder. It has to be hard to begin with. Once it's been confirmed that it's been abandoned, he then goes back and actually cleans up the homeless shelter, which is very beneficial because they're in the floodplain. And when we have a large rain event, all of that trash is going into the stream anyway. So he's either picking it up before it goes into the stream or afterwards when it's in the stream. And it's much lighter before it gets wet. So God bless them. And then we have 2 full-time water quality staff that do all of the testing and monitoring in the river each week, be it water quality parameters from dissolved oxygen to salinity to sampling every week for fecal coliforms. But we are also responsible for maintaining all of the city's BMPs, like public safety has 7 underground sound filters, public services has 3 retention ponds, fire station number 2 has 2 retention ponds, the Nano water plant has some of the prettiest constructed wetlands you've ever seen. So we inspect those every month, but we also maintain them until, maybe next year. We might get a little help, but if not, that's okay too. So we actually have 148 private BMPs that we inspect every year. In other words, when the city issues a stormwater permit to a new construction, whether it's a residential subdivision or commercial business, they get a stormwater permit. With that stormwater permit comes an SCM, stormwater control measure. We inspect that stormwater control measure that we permitted twice a year every year, so that we know that these stormwater control measures stay in compliance. So we do those twice a year, and then we do our BMPs once a month every month. And there's 240 of those. So one of the wonderful things that we did this year that Streets and Parks and Rec helped us with is we had standing water over on Ford Street that was breaking down our streets or pavement. And so in order to get the water off and where it really needs to go, we built 2 rain gardens to draw the water off of the street and into something very pretty. And then I combined with the institutes, which, as you know, the city took the Sturgeon City Institutes back over this year. They are now called the New River Institutes. And we actually had our students, our Science Institute students, actually built both of these rain gardens. And they were, talk about restoring hope in me for the younger generation. These were some of the most go-getting kids I've ever run across. They were awesome. I hope to see them in every institute we ever give. So we put beautiful plants in. We pulled the water off the road. We're doing extra filtration. So that butts up to Thompson School Creek. So we actually have cleaner water going into Thompson School. And then another thing that we installed last year that you heard about was the trash trout that is actually in Scales Creek, directly downstream of the Ellis Lift Station or Hardison Hills. And I have some numbers. We clean the trash trout once a week, every week. And so far we've cleaned out 1,312 articles of trash out of that trash trout. So it did not make its way across base. It did not go out into Northeast Creek and then enter the New River. For instance, there were 111 cans, 210 plastic bottles, 860 pieces of styrofoam. I'm going to repeat that one, 860. 80 plastic bags. The good thing is Parks and Rec I guess I need to start donating them to you. We got 23 balls. There are a lot of kids without balls. And then 31 pieces of paper. So the trash trout is doing its job. Again, we're trying different avenues to make sure that the city of Jacksonville is one of the cleanest municipalities around. And it's the right thing to do, and it also helps with restoring our habitat, so it's also important. And then, of course, my favorite, the Oyster Highway project. We are almost done with phase 3, which was, remember, I can't remember if I put it in there or not. Phase 3 was expanding phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was 6 reefs, phase 2 was 6 reefs, and all 12 were half acre. Phase 3 was expanding them to an acre. And this is all of the grant money, public and private, that we've received today for the Oyster Highway project. But I will tell you, we're probably going back to council for phase 4. We've got people asking us to apply for money. Wow.
Okay, throw me in that briar patch. We will apply probably for phase 4, and phase 4 would be to inundate all 12 sites with as much substrate that I can pack in there and as many oysters as I can possibly buy. That's my hope for phase 4. Remember, this is your Oyster Highway. This connects Wilson's Bay to Stones Bay, because you remember an oyster needs a hard substrate to attach to within the first 2 weeks of its life. And because the New River moves so slowly,
the oysters that we were putting in Wilson Bay had no substrate to attach to on its way down to Stones Bay on an outgoing tide, or vice versa, from Stones Bay up to Wilson Bay on an incoming tide. And so we've got 6 reefs on the west side, 6 reefs on the east side. They are spaced, so within those 2 weeks, it has a choice of where it wants to land. And remember, this was the top part with the is phase 1, and then phase 2 is the bottom part. And remember, we used new substrate, the oyster catchers and the oyster castles. And the city of Jacksonville did, for the Oyster Highway project, win the Water Conservationist Award that I got to go and pick up. The governor's award banquet was very special. It was an honor to be there. It was an honor to represent the city of Jacksonville. But if I've said it once, I'll say it again. If mayor and council had not made the decision 25 years ago to clean up Wilson Bay and the New River and take ownership by shutting down the wastewater treatment facility and going 100% land application, and then providing me a stage to do this, we wouldn't be here today. We would not. So please thank mayor and council for being so forward thinking about what Jacksonville really is. I mean, the land application plant, we're now growing a forest instead of polluting a watershed, was a major step. So it's the city. And then illicit discharges, that is our #1 priority as per the stormwater permit. Whenever we get an illicit discharge, we drop what we're doing and we respond. We just had one today. 3 people called the police and said, there's something green in the river. Somebody is dumping antifreeze. I jumped in the truck, went to the river. It was down by the USO. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yep, they're doing a dye study. So I called TJ with our utilities and I said, TJ, are y'all doing a dye study on your lines? He's like, yes. I was like, okay, because it's in the river. He's like, yes. I said, okay, it's not antifreeze. And the people were still there, so I was actually able to educate them on what it was, that it's just like green Kool-Aid. It does not hurt the fish. It does not hurt the habitat at all. It's just coloring. So that is it. Thank you for allowing me to update you. Do you have any questions?
I did. On the second slide that you showed on the homeless little camps, there was one bank, something or other.
It was on the, meaning the stream bank.
Oh, the stream
of
bank.
Brick Kiln. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was just the bank.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I'd like to ask a question. So, you know, what Pat has talked to you about is all water-based, and obviously in the Parks Department, what do we do a lot of? We do a lot of mowing. I think, you know, we didn't talk tonight about how, whether it's the city of Jacksonville or private or homeowners or private businesses that are out doing yards, how they have a responsibility to make sure not to put their grass clippings, leave them in the road or blow them down the storm drains. So, why don't you talk about that for a minute, Pat? Do you mind?
That is one of the things that we target. We target our landscaping companies as well as individual homeowners in the spring and in the fall. In the spring, it's all about mowing and fertilizing, and in the fall, it's all about the leaves and the twigs. So what we don't want, and we try to impress upon everybody, is if you put it in the gutter and it rains before it's picked up, it's going to enter into the storm drain or the catch basin. And just ask Mr. Cannon the next time Streets makes a presentation, and he'll tell you how badly packed these storm drains and then the pipes are. They're constantly having to clean these out. Even with general maintenance, they can't keep up. I mean, when you've got 8,000 plus storm drains within the city limits, how many of those can you really do in a day? And so what we need to do is educate the public and go, Out of sight, out of mind is not a good thing with grass clippings and leaves, because if the storm drain in front of your house or down the road is clogged, stormwater runoff has nowhere to go. And when we have a tropical storm, or one of the H words that I will not say until the season is over, where's that water gonna go? What we don't want to do is for it to flood the street, someone hydroplane, and then they're hurt. Or it backs up into your driveway and floods, you know, the first level of your house or your business. So what we're trying to do is do a better job of educating. And with Parks and Rec, you'll notice that most of their mowers are now all mulchers. But before they went to the mulchers, which is good because now not only are they not shooting it out to the road, which they didn't, and I'll discuss that in a minute, but with the grass clippings going back down in the blades, here's your natural fertilizer. So you don't have to spend money buying chemical fertilizer, which you can't apply before a rain event because it's all positively buoyant. And when it rains, it goes over to the ditch. You got the prettiest grass on the ditch. Not your yard, the ditch. So, but all those nutrients, when it goes into the ditch, into the waterway, nutrient loading causes an algal bloom. If all that flows out into the river and it's too much, the algal bloom will cause the dissolved oxygen to be depleted. You get a fish kill. Now, we've not had one of those in a very long time because we're doing such a good job. But again, before they went to the mulchers, you know how that first line, like this is the road and this is the park or the yard, they would turn the mowers away so that it blowed back. They would never put it into the street. Now, if I could just get all our landscapers to do that. What did I forget?
Pardon?
What I forget?
Yeah, no, you didn't forget anything. I thought it was an opportunity for us to talk
Absolutely.
about that. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sometimes in the streets, not all the streets, but you see they're always wet. The water's always, it's never dry. What caused that in some of the streets?
Which streets?
I know there's sometimes
know
when it's
exactly.
hot out, you'll have cracks in the road where water seeps back up
From groundwater.
from groundwater.
That could happen in the summertime or depending on how much rain we've had or in the wintertime. Because in the wintertime, your groundwater and your seasonal high water table actually rises because most of the trees have gone to sleep. And the trees are what pulls the water out of your groundwater and your seasonal high water table and causes it to lower in the spring and summer, so it rises in the fall and the winter. Because all not the evergreens, but all the deciduous trees go to sleep, so they're not using as much water through the trunk out the leaves. That whole transpiration and evaporation cycle slows down a lot. So you may get some water coming up through the cracks, but if you see a street that constantly has water.
I was just passing. I didn't pay any attention as to what street, but I just noticed some street was dry and some street was always like wet where the water was prevalent.
Next time you drive by it, make a mental note to call either Kelly or I so that we can check it, please, just to make sure there's not a problem.
And you know, that's a great example right there is to call. You know, we in the Parks Department, we don't hesitate to call Pat, you know, because we don't, if it's water driven, look, what are we trying to figure it out for? Call Pat. She's going to know the answers to it. What is, and nothing, and I think Pat would echo this, nothing's too trivial for her because we don't know. We don't want to make assumptions because we don't want to hurt anything in the water life or create algae blooms or whatever it is. We don't want to do those things. So by calling her, we can get some resolution, and obviously she doesn't have a problem generally coming out or leading us through how to remedy whatever problem it is that we've come up on.
Absolutely. Did you have a question? Did we answer it?
No, actually, I didn't want to show how naive I was when you were talking about the oysters and the different areas along the June. and I'm from like a concrete jungle, in New York. So the oysters, and lastly, I had oysters for the first time last year, right out of the ocean. They put them on the grill, and so that was a treat for me. But these spots that you pointed out on the map there, their purpose is what?
So the Oyster Highway, again, is 12 reefs, 6 on the west side of the river and 6 on the east side of the river. And the functionality was to connect Wilson Bay to Stones Bay so that the river could be restored habitat-wise with oyster reefs between the two. An oyster reef is very, very, very vital marine habitat. One adult oyster can filter up to 15 gallons of water every 24 hours, and it can remove heavy organics, heavy metals, any other type of pollutants. They're nothing but a filter. That's all an oyster is a filter. And it's the best filter God ever made for our marine environment. So there's 3 important marine environments: wetlands, SAVs, which are seagrasses, submerged aquatic vegetation, and oyster reefs. All 3 of those keep a waterway healthy. But we had lost all of our oyster reefs between Wilson Bay and Stones Bay because of the city and the base's wastewater treatment facilities that were built in the 40s that treated sewage effluent and then dumped it into Wilson Bay. And all those soft, for 50 plus years, so all those soft organics flowing down the river covered up all the hard substrate, so it killed all the bivalves. So what we've done is we shut the plant down in April of 1998 and went 100% to land application. So again, instead of polluting the watershed, we are now growing a forest. The city is doing that. And we're the 3rd largest on the East Coast that does that. Everyone needs to do that. Every municipality needs to invest into removing their effluent out of their watershed, because you can only go 3 days without drinking water. Water is vitally important. So we are building oyster reefs at all 12 of these sites, and then adding adult oysters so that they will have babies, and the babies will spread out. So what we're trying to do is resaturate the system, because it will make and improve water quality and make the water even cleaner.
Okay.
And I don't even have to be there. They can do it on their own. I don't have to supervise them.
Filter system, I got it now.
Absolutely. And we've put 10 million into Wilson Bay, and we've put about 15 million into the river. So total, in 20 plus years, we've added 25 million oysters, but I'm not done.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you.
And no question is silly, except an unasked one.
Yeah.
So always ask the
I was
question.
being nice to myself.
Still gonna eat them though when they're in the filter?
So it hits the filter, yeah.
I'm not gonna know the bad side of it. Still gonna chop on it.
Louis, I'm glad you asked, because I understood it, but I didn't understand it the way the second time she explained it. Yes, so.
Well, I apologize.
No, it wasn't you, but I just, you know how you can just visualize, well, are these the oysters that we eat? Or once they,
No. So when we built these reefs, we put a research sanctuary on all of our reefs, and we have signs at the 4 corners that says you cannot take the shellfish, but we invite you to fish, and then share on the city's website any thin fish that catch, because you get bragging rights. You know, my fish was this big. No, mine was this big. Mine was this big. So that's what fishermen do. So you can take thin fish, but you cannot take the bivalves, because there are tools. Those are the tools. Now, their babies, wherever they go and land, absolutely you could take those.
okay.
Any other questions from Ms. Pat?
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you. Yeah.
But they are the oysters that we eat.
Yes, just not those specifically.
These are sacred.
Same process.
Same
Yes.
process.
Hey, these are sacred.
Same process.
They are
It's a
sacred.
different area.
Because I'm gonna say a store full of chemicals, they will kill you.
Well, that's why, another reason why we put a research sanctuary on there is we didn't want people to eat, because we used a lot of grant money for this.
Yeah.
And those are public funds, but there were a lot of private funds too. So we wanted to protect our investment, but we also wanted to protect our people.
Good education
citizens.
on that.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yes, thank you to both our guests.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
I want to take a minute just to thank
Yes,
both of them for coming in. And obviously I thank T, but real quick, you know, I learned a lot tonight too. And it's good to hear some of those things. And I think it's even better to see how excited Pat gets when she's telling you about it. And obviously she has a passion for that, and that's wonderful. And, you know, I've never realized that the oyster was the filter. I don't know that you know, hearing that story for me, okay, now I understand that a little better. I'm no different than some of the people here tonight. So we appreciate you coming out tonight and talking to all of us about that. Thank you.
Well, Mr. T here actually helped us, year one on the Oyster Highway, put some of the adult oysters out on AR 398, he and his family.
Oh,
It's been a lot of fun.
yes.
Need to go back and fish it, so.
Yes, you
Bragging rights.
That's right, gotta get the bragging rights. Well said.
I do have a
Yes,
question.
yes.
This is October, and I know we have Halloween. Do they still have that program where they're doing the Halloween contest? Since we're not gonna meet until
I
December.
think that's something that media generally in the past has handled. I will check with Lisa and we'll send out an email.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, our next meeting will be December 7th at 6 o'clock. And we have one in February, one in April, and one in June. If there is no further business, I look for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Thank all those in favor, raise your hand. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.